Welcome to Profit and Prosper, a podcast that will empower you to become financially independent as an entrepreneur. I'm your host, Sarah Young, an entrepreneur, wealth coach, and mentor to driven, ambitious female business owners who are ready to take action towards having a richer and more impactful life. I'm here to push you to think bigger about what's possible for your business and life, and I believe that your business is the best way to have more time and financial freedom. Just 10 years ago, I was $55,000 in debt and leaving a traumatic marriage as a 20-something. Fast forward to today, I now run a 7-figure agency with a team of 10 and growing, and have built over $1 million in net worth while balancing taking care of my health and prioritizing being a wife and mom. In this podcast, I will teach you how to scale your business, take home a 6-figure paycheck, and save and invest for your financial future without having to sacrifice your life today. What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the Profit and Prosper podcast. This is episode number 95. And in this episode, we are going to talk about how to pay yourself a $100,000 salary as the CEO of your business. So before we jump into that, I'm just going to tell you, I'm recording this on January 3rd. So we are 3 days into 2024. And I have already, 3 days in, I have already made my first mistake of the year in business. A very costly mistake, lots of time, literally thousands of dollars. I'm not going to go into it, but that's not the point of this episode. But it has got me thinking about sustainability. Going into Q1, I already knew that my primary focus for the quarter was going to be on optimization of our processes and marketing, and just really making both Young & Co. and my coaching businesses just really sustainable, really optimized, really tweaking all the things that we already do well, and just trying to set a really solid foundation. Because, in Young & Co., with the business we bought, we're combined over $1 million in revenue. And then, on a monthly basis, we're now seeing $80,000 to $100,000 and some $1,000 coming in every month. And that's just a whole different world for me. And then in the coaching business too, we've got some really great things going on. And so I already knew that the focus of the quarter was going to be on optimization and sustainability. And it has just really been driven home by the fact that, I did make a poor decision that I take full responsibility for. And I'll share more about that probably on my Instagram after I have some time to process it, and or, back on the podcast. I'm pretty open about things. And honestly, I also saw a trend towards the end of 2023, probably in the last half of the year. I saw a very noticeable uptick in the number of people, whether they were clients, friends of mine, acquaintances, people that I just saw and followed on social media. I saw a noticeable trend upwards of the number of people who were burning out, wanting to downsize their businesses, looking to sell because they just couldn't do it anymore, looking to just shut things down and walk away. And these things always happen, right? Like, it's not new that businesses shut down. But I think that I just noticed, this is obviously not a scientific study. This is just purely anecdotal. I just noticed a trend. And I really think it's driven by, in part, people do not have their businesses set up to be financially sustainable. And we need to fix that, right? We have to fix it, because if your business is not financially sustainable, meaning you do more than just pay the bills in your business, like, what is the point of this if you cannot also make this financially stable in your life? Why are you doing all of this? And I know, we like to help people. I know we like to have an impact. I know we like the work that we do, but you can have an impact and not have a business. Having a business is not the only way to impact the world. And so if you're going to do this, what is the point if you cannot make it financially sustainable, both in your business and for your life as a whole? I'd say the other thing that I have seen is a lot of people who are ready to just burn it to the ground have not been running their business in an energetically sustainable way. They are constantly in a state where their nervous system is elevated, whether that means you're stressed or anxious or constantly fearful or just wanting to be in shutdown mode. They don't have the time or energy to take care of their health or spend with their families. And I see a lot of people who tell themselves constantly, okay, once this busy couple weeks is over, then I'll finally have the time to focus on other things, except they don't, because there's always something. There's always something, and it's a never ending cycle. So, tying it back to me saying I made a huge mistake already 3 days into January, it's not that I'm saying my business is financially or energetically unsustainable. I'm saying I've been able to deal with it quickly and be okay with it because I have set things up in my businesses, both of them, to be financially and energetically sustainable. So let's make 2024 the year of sustainability and optimization. So you're making enough money to be able to, cover everything in your business, to pay yourself consistently, to save money, pay down debt, and also energetically. Like, can we have time to build a life outside of our businesses, to not work 40 hours a week, to finally be able to take care of our health, to finally hang out with the people that we love and go on vacations and do all of those things? Here's my belief. I don't think that you have to take the foot off of the gas in your business to do those things. I think it's about designing your business in such a way that you can do the and, right? It's both and, it's not either or. This is my belief. So, following up too on last week's episode where we talked about how do you 10x your business, the point that I wanted to make in that episode was to encourage you to think bigger, right? To think bigger about what your business can do for you. And really, the important thing is we need to be able to pay ourselves a good amount of money to make it so that the risk, the time that you put into your business, and the energy that you put into your business, that you're getting a really great payout. So some of you are listening to this and you're like, hell yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's talk about how to pay ourselves 6 figures. A lot of those people who are ready for this, I find, are the people who maybe came from a corporate job where they had a 6-figure paycheck and they're ready to figure out how do we replace that paycheck. I was there. I was in that boat. I have replaced my corporate paycheck pretty consistently for the last almost 2 years now. There's another bucket of you who are listening who are like, this all sounds great, but I don't think I need that much money. Or maybe you're married and your spouse has a job and you don't need the money to pay the bills. And so you're like, I don't know if I need this. I'm just going to tell you without getting on my soapbox, y'all, you know how important I've said it is. You have to take care of yourself. You can't just rely on your spouse all the time. I can give you so many ideas for what you can do with a 6-figure paycheck. So many things that you can do for yourself, for your business, and for your life if you have that amount of money coming in consistently that you just don't even realize. And it's more than just putting all of it into your family or into your kids, okay? You can build wealth in your name. You can upgrade your life. You can allow your spouse to leave their soul-sucking corporate job, so on and so forth, okay? So I'm hoping I don't have to sell you guys too much on wanting the 6-figure paycheck, but people don't realize how much you need to do in sales in order to take home a 6-figure paycheck. Like the first milestone people aim for is, I want to do 6 figures in sales. And you think, oh, I'm going to have made it then. Except you're nowhere near being able to pay yourself to put 6 figures in your pocket after business expenses, after taxes, after all these other things that come up. So as we're planning for the year, we're still early in January. And so as you are continuing to think about what you want to do this year and refining your plans, let's set the plan, let's set the bar higher and say, what are the things we have to do in order to put that $100,000 or more into your pocket? Couple quick reminders though, before we jump into the nitty gritty. First, don't forget about the 100 reviews by the 100th episode giveaway that I have got going on. Go to sarahhyoung.com/reviews after you leave a review on the podcast on Apple or Spotify. If we get to 100 combined reviews on Apple and Spotify by the time the 100th episode airs, which is going to come out on February 15th, if we have at least 100 reviews, then I will have 2 giveaways. One giveaway is a $2,000 scholarship to one of my group programs. The other giveaway will be a one-on-one session with me. So don't forget, leave a review for me, screenshot it, go fill out the form to submit. And if we get to 100 combined reviews, make sure you share with a friend to make sure that they also go and leave a review to help us get to 100. Then if we get to 100 combined reviews, I will do the giveaway and randomly select 2 of the people who submitted the form. The other note that I want to make before we jump in is that you guys probably know, I hope you know, We constantly enroll clients in my Scaling Made Simple program. This is my high touch 6-month group program. It's a small, more intimate group for business owners who are making consistent sales. You've made at least 5 to 10K a month in sales, and you are ready to scale to multi 6 and 7 figures. We constantly enroll new clients. There's no cutoff for launches for that because, y'all, I don't love launches, okay? But for the month of January, because it's a great time of year to get started inside of SMS, I am offering a bonus during the month of January for anyone who enrolls with the Panful option. You will get an additional free 2-hour one-on-one strategy session with me where we will map out exactly what you are going to do in your business. And then you get the 6 month of coaching calls and community support and all of the course videos and resources to help you implement that. Okay. So go and apply for Scaling Made Simple at sarahhyoung.com/scale. Okay. So let's talk about the nitty gritty of $100,000 paychecks. So my goal is not $100,000 pre-tax because that can quickly be cut down to like 70, 75K. The goal is $100,000 after tax. So that's about $8,000 a month after tax, which means realistically, you're going to need to get $10,000 to $12,000 a month pre-tax. Okay. So that is the amount of money that your business is going to need to generate after you pay all of your business expenses. So you take your sales, pay all your expenses, and you're left with your profit. I know some of you with S Corps, you'll have some of your W-2 wages up in expenses. For purposes of this, I'm going to combine that W-2 wage with the additional profit left over. This is what we call seller's discretionary earnings or owner's discretionary earnings. This is something I've talked about on some of my podcast episodes before, not to throw jargon at you, but I think it's important to know some of this terminology, especially if you're thinking about ever selling your business down the road, because SDE, seller discretionary earnings, is an important metric that the value of your business is going to be based on. So as a benchmark, I like to take the total profit of the business plus any of the W-2 owner compensation, combining that number together. I want that to be, as a benchmark, at least 30 to 50% of sales. Generally, if you're doing low to mid 6 figures in revenue, it's going to be easier for you to hit the higher end of that benchmark, so 50%. And as your business grows into the high 6, 7 figures, it generally will start to drop down to the lower end because you have more overhead. That's totally normal. Although I have also seen in some industries, some business models where, they're making multi 7 figures and generating more than 50% of SDE or total profit, right? Which it can happen. It just depends on the business model. But the benchmark is that you're taking 30 to 50% of those sales going into your profit, which you allocate to taxes and pay. And so this is where we want to get to that. The total profit number is $10,000 to $12,000 per month to account for paying taxes and then leaving you with at least $8,000 to put into your personal bank account as your pay. So I'm going to give you in a second 3 different models I see with different industries that you can use to pay yourself $100,000. I also did another episode on this, episode 54, where I walked through 3 business models that I would use to pay myself $50K, $100K, and $300K paychecks. Those were 3 different example business models. So you could see the scale you have to get to hit that $300K plus paycheck. But in this episode, I'm going to give you 3 different ways to pay yourself that $100K paycheck. So diving more into that model, because I think this is a benchmark or a goal that a lot of people probably need to set next. Before we talk about the models, I want you to understand a couple of other terms: gross margin and profit margin. These are terms that people use all the time and they use them incorrectly, okay? So we know that sales is the money you have coming into your business. Gross profit is what you have left over after you pay your team members to do the work, or if you have to have products or anything after you pay for those products. That is called gross profit. This is one of the most important numbers on your financials. And if you don't have a team, if you are the one doing delivery, I want you to think about how much would it cost you to pay somebody to do the delivery, because you need to make sure that your pricing is right to make sure that your gross margin at the point where you do hire someone, you can afford them, okay, and still have a profit. So gross margin is gross profit divided by sales. It's the percentage. So let's say you sell something for $1,000 and the cost to have your team deliver it is $300. That means your gross profit is 1,000 minus 300, $700 is gross profit, or 70% of sales is your gross margin. You take your gross profit and allocate that money to all your overhead expenses and then your pay and taxes. If we think about a traditional way of viewing a P&L, right? You want your gross margin to be high enough. And we'll talk about with the 3 models, I'll talk about the typical gross margins that we see. But you want your margin to be high enough because if it's too low, that means you have to do more sales to bring in the same amount of money. Okay. The higher it is, the more you're keeping of each sale. If you're giving away 60% of your sales, is that if it costs you 60% of every sale to pay your team to do the work, you're going to have to do a crap ton of work in order to make the same amount of money. Okay. So, as an example, if somebody is selling something for $1,000 and their gross margin is only 40%, that means they're only going to keep 400 of the 1,000. Okay. And that 400 is what goes to pay expenses, so on and so forth. Now, profit margin is different. This is more in line with the 30 to 50% benchmark I was talking about. Profit is where you take your bottom line profit and divide that by sales. And so this is after all of your business expenses. Okay. So we're going to take that bottom line profit, and that's typically what we want to be, 30 to 50% of your sales. Or if you have an S Corp and you're getting some W-2 salary, it could be like 10%, 20% or higher. Okay. So just understand those terms. I think it's important. I don't always like to use jargon and terminology in these episodes, but y'all are smart. Okay. You're smart. You need to know these things. So 3 models to pay yourself $100,000. In all of these models, you're going to have to at least double your pay goal to hit in revenue. So to pay yourself 100K, just know high level, you're going to probably have to at least double that. So hit at least 200,000 in revenue to pay yourself 100K. In most cases, for most of you, you are going to need to consistently generate and sustain and deliver on that level of revenue. You have to have help, okay? You're going to have to hire a team. I just did a whole series on this in Q4 on hiring and training a team. So go check that out if this is one of your 2024 goals to build a team. It was called the Dream Team series. But you're probably going to have some sort of team support. The first model we're going to talk about is the one that has the least amount of team support. This one we're going to call the high ticket, low expense model. You can pay yourself an $8K per month or more paycheck. I've seen people do this with as little as $15,000 a month in revenue. On that $15K revenue, you're going to be able to allocate yourself about $3,000 to $5,000 in monthly expenses. This will go to cover things like your VA, software, office expenses, etc. So remember, to take home $8,000 plus taxes, we need to have before tax $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So if your revenue is $15K, that's going to leave you that $3,000 to $5K to cover your expenses, and then have $10,000 to $12,000 for taxes and then your pay. This model really only works for people who have a higher ticket business model. To sustain this business with this amount of revenue, $15K a month in revenue isn't nothing, right? To sustain that amount of revenue with only $3,000 to $5K in overhead, with really probably just like a part-time admin type support, you have to go high ticket because you can't rely on having a lot of deliverables, right? This is generally going to be people who do coaching, who do high ticket consulting, who do corporate projects. It's usually more of the strategic type support where you are the expert, you show up, you do your thing, and then you kind of walk away. You're not tied to having to spend hours and hours in your office preparing a ton of deliverables. Model 2 is the model where we're probably going to have more deliverables. So as an example, it could be like Young & Co.'s accounting packages or our tax services where, yes, there's some strategy involved, but a lot of it is really driven by the deliverables of tax returns and tax plans and bookkeeping and reporting and accounting, right? And so model number 2, we're going to call the medium to high ticket services with a team. Because as you get more of the deliverables, you're going to need probably more support in order to help you get those deliverables out the door and sustain your business. So you can hit a 100K paycheck on about 20 to 25K in revenue, maybe up to 30K depending on your team costs. That leaves you with $8,000 to $12,000 a month in expenses. So 20 to 25K revenue, $8,000 to $12,000 a month in expenses will leave you with that 10 to 12K pre-tax profit. All right. With 8 to 12,000 a month, that can afford you some team support. You can probably afford a full-time person and or maybe a full-timer and 1 to 2 part-timers, depending on the cost. A full-time employee can cost you, depending on the industry, depending on their credentials and experience, 5 to 10K a month, right? And so, depending on how much you have to pay somebody, you can definitely afford to get that support. And then that is your point person for helping you get all the deliverables done. Typically, we see businesses in doing this model in the B2B service industries. So, again, Young & Co. is a great example of this. Marketing agencies, designers, stuff like that. And this is where we're going to have our terms. Typically, we see with these types of businesses gross margin at about 60 to 65% or higher, but the gross margin needs to be in that 60 to 65% range. And that's where we typically see like medium to high ticket type services. Because with this model, you can afford to, with your pricing, it's a good balance of needing the number of clients to hit 20 to 25K in monthly revenue and then being able to afford your team. So that's business model number 2. The last one is what I'm going to say, this is what we're going to call like the low medium service model. E-commerce businesses usually will also fit into this model too. With this model, you are probably going to need $35,000 to $40,000 in monthly revenue in order to take home that 6-figure paycheck. Typically, if you have a low to medium ticket service-based business or an e-commerce business, your gross margin, instead of being 60 to 65% or higher, like in the previous models, it's usually closer to 50%. We see a lot of e-commerce businesses at about a 50% margin. I see a lot of B2C service type businesses, think like home organization, home services, trades, different types of models like that, where the gross margin is 50%-ish, give or take, okay? I don't like to drop below 50%, let's say 50 to 60%. It costs more for you to do the work, and relatively speaking, your pricing is probably lower. It can be a little bit more competitive to be in that B2C space. There's less strategy and high ticket support that you can do. I'm not saying you can't do it. There's just less of it there. And so we see a lot of businesses fall into that. Of course, you can have a B2C business and be in, the medium to high ticket model, right? I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just less common. Let's say 35 to 40K revenue. If you have a gross margin of 50%, on 40K revenue, that means half or 20K is your gross profit. And so that 20K, out of the 20K, you're going to take, $8,000 to $10,000. And that is what you're going to use for admin support. To cover that amount of revenue, you're going to need customer service. You're going to need somebody to take care of your customers for you, a front desk person, somebody to answer the phone, because you just have a higher volume and more stuff to schedule and more things to manage, right? And so out of that 20K gross profit, you have $8,000 to $10,000 to go for expenses, which is $100K a year, right? It's not nothing. But it can definitely afford you the support. It can help you do marketing, cover your software, cover your office. Maybe you have rent, right? And then that leaves you with that $10,000 to $12,000 pre-tax, $8K in your pocket after tax. So those are the 3 models, right? There's a high ticket, high margin, medium to high ticket, and then a low to medium ticket. Depending on the industry you're in, I want you to think about which of these 3 models is most likely for you is the most likely one you're going to want to use to put into your business this year, and think about whether your business is performing in line with those margins, okay? And then if not, ask yourself, what are the things that I need to do in order to not just scale my revenue up, but also make sure that I'm paying attention to my expenses and allocating accordingly to make sure that everything's getting covered. You have the team support you need. You have the budget for marketing and software that you need to run a business of that size. I think sometimes I can talk about these numbers and people feel overwhelmed. They're like, oh, this is so far off. I'm never going to get there. And just know, obviously, that is not my goal with this episode. I just want to be real. I want you to understand. I don't want to sprinkle fairy dust over your eyes and make you see like sunshine and rainbows. Building a business that pays you a 6-figure paycheck is not just something that's going to happen overnight, but it is crucially important for you to think about, how can I build my business in a way that is financially sustainable, that is paying me enough to make it truly worth it for me to put the time and energy into my business versus just going to get a job somewhere, right? And also energetically sustainable. So I find in a lot of cases, you're going to need some sort of support in your business to make it energetically sustainable, to make it so that you are not responsible for every single thing in the day to day, because that gets old. In the first year or two, maybe you can handle it. I'm on year 6 now of being an entrepreneur. I'm in year 6, and I'm going to tell you, I was over having to do the day to day stuff years ago. It gets old. I don't want to spend my time doing that all the time anymore. That's why I build a team. That's why I get support. So that's it for this episode. We talked through 3 different models and ways and benchmarks that you can use to get your business to a place where it can pay you a 6-figure salary. As a reminder, that is the whole goal of Scaling Made Simple, is to help you take your business from maybe you're a solopreneur, maybe you have a small team, and to walk alongside you and get coaching from me every week about how can I scale my business and make it financially and energetically sustainable. How can I have both and? How can I 10x and also make it sustainable? So go to sarahhyoung.com/scale to apply. And don't forget, in the month of January, I have the pay in full bonus of an additional strategy session with me. And of course, if this episode was helpful, don't forget to go leave a review, screenshot your review, and go upload it at the form. The link is in the show notes, or sarahhyoung.com/reviews. Go fill out the form. And then once we get to 100 reviews, as long as we get there by the 100th episode, I will do our giveaway of a $2,000 scholarship to one of my group programs or a strategy session with me. So that is it for this episode, y'all. And don't forget to share with a friend too if they need to hear this. I will see you back next week, where we're going to continue talking about how to build a financially sustainable business in 2024. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Listening and learning is great, but implementing what you learned is even better. So what's one thing you can do this week to make more money in your business, save for your financial future, and start living your most prosperous life? If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share with a friend, because it helps me reach more amazing female entrepreneurs like yourself. See you in next week's episode.